Hello and welcome to the Inventive Marketing Club number 17. On this webinar, I'm going to be looking at Google Search Console, or GSC for short, and I'm going to be giving you a walkthrough, really, taking you through all my favorite parts of it, why it's useful, but particularly how to find out where you rank on Google for certain keywords and finding page errors, because it can be often difficult to find those yourself. Just a little bit about me for people who don't know, people who are new. So my name is Ben Canet. Hello. I've supported over 500 businesses since we started back in 2009 to do better business, whether that means developing marketing strategy, web design, video, data analysis. I am a jack of all trades, really. I'm interested in lots of different things to do with business, but essentially it's I love helping people overcome challenges and progressing forward in their business. This is a monthly webinar. A variety of different topics that we cover, advice, tips, strategy. This is a walkthrough as well, where I take you through the specifics of a particular application, but sometimes we go high level and look at things from a high level viewpoint rather than the detail. Feel free to ask questions as you go along. One moment, this has stopped working. Sorry, bit of a glitch there. Feel free to ask questions as you go along. And for those of you already members, there's plenty of previous webinars. I think we're up to 16 now, lots of different topics. Do go and check those out. We've got lots of resources on there as well, plus a lot of other workshops that I do outside of this club, I put into the club as well. So you've got easy access to all of that content, which otherwise is spread throughout the internet. So I'll put it all in one place for you. And if you like podcasts like me, we've got a podcast version of this club, all these club sessions as well. So you can follow along while you're in the car, walking the dog, or doing the washing up. If you need help with any of that, do email me on support@ratherinventive.com. Okay, so just a round up before we go into Google Search Console walkthrough. What is it? Where does it come from? Well, it used to be called Google Webmasters or Webmasters, and it was really a tool for you to see the data that Google has on your website on the Google side. Now, a lot of you may be familiar with Google Analytics, and that's a really useful statistics tool that sits on the website collecting data and passing that back to Google Analytics, where you can view it, query it, and basically see all the different types of information about how people view your site, how long for, which pages are best, and so on. All of that sort of lovely data. Google Search Console is a really good tool, actually, and it's been developed over the last year or two to be pretty darn good in terms of what you can do with it and the utility and the information provided in there. But essentially, the way I like to look at it is Google Analytics is everything to do with your website, all the data on there, activity and so on, everything to do with your website on your site. Google Search Console is everything to do with Google, but about your site, relevant to your site. So we're looking at things like the number of click-throughs from Google Search. So someone types in a keyword, they see your result come up, they click on that and go through. So it tells you that sort of information, how many times it's shown, keywords used, the rank for those specific keywords. And quite importantly, this is something new or newer that they're doing, is they're telling you about problems. And specifically, it's problems they're having indexing or reading the site. And the reason that's useful is, A, you want to make it easy for Google and fast to Google for Google to index your site. It may help with what rank you are if you have a nice, clean, well-operated site. But more importantly, just for users of the site, we don't want dead ends, missing pages, or things that just don't work correctly. So it's a really good highlighting for that. Anyway, so let's have a look at the walkthrough. Let's see if I can share my browser screen here. Okay, so this is the dashboard for Google Search Console. But for those of you who haven't set it up, I'm just going to quickly show you how you might set up a new domain in Google Search Console. So what we're going to do is go up to the drop-down arrow here, click on Add Property, and I'm going to put in my domain name. Now, there's two options to choose from. I would always go for the one on the left, which I'll explain in a minute, but commonly, it used to be set up with the URL prefix on the right. The difference between the two is if you set it up with the domain verification or property, then Google is going to look at every single bit of traffic that goes to all of your different elements of your domain. Now we've got ratherinventive.com, so you might have people going to the non-www version, the mobile version, the www version, the non-secure version, or the secure HTTPS version. Plus, we've got other services coming off this, like our email service through Campaign Monitor. So that's on email.ratherinventive.com. So you might have lots of different elements or subdomains as part of your website, which you want to track in one place. If you want to do that, then you want to put in your domain just here. Let me just copy in a domain, for example, mydomain.com, continue. And then what it comes up with is a special code, this little code here. And you'll need to copy that and give it to your web developer or someone who manages your domain for you. Or if you're comfortable, going into your domain record and adding a text record and then popping this little bit of text in there. I would show you how to do that, but it varies from supplier to supplier. So there are lots of different ways to do it. But if you're at all unsure, you could just Google the name of your domain supplier, like GoDaddy or 123reg, and then add text record. But whoever supplies the domain for you should be able to do this reasonably quickly. And what this is doing is checking with Google that you own the domain, that you have access to the domain, because it doesn't want to give you data, performance data, about someone else's domain. Only you can access this. The other option is to verify by URL prefix. Now, if you've got specific requirements, you might want to use this. So I will just enter here the secure version of mydomain.com, continue. And this is actually the older way of verifying. And I've got lots of different options here. A typical one, people used to upload a little file. I used to like linking with Google Analytics. If we had Google Analytics already on the website, then under the same account, then we can connect them that way. My preference is to go for the domain property ownership first and verify that way and not use this unless you have a reason to do it otherwise. But once you've verified that, you will land on this dashboard here, and this just gives you a little overview about what's going on. Really, what's nice about it is it gives you an at a glance if there's any issues, which you might see in this coverage area here. You also might notice if traffic has completely dropped. Let's say your site's just not getting any traffic, maybe leads have stopped coming through. This is going to give you an idea as if people just aren't coming through on Google search, and it's going to give you just a quick heads up on that. But really, the detail is by diving into each one of these different areas. So let's start with performance. Okay, on here, and we're just looking at our website, ratherinventive.com, because we've been doing a little bit of optimization recently, so it's a good example. So let's have a quick look here. By default, we are only looking for data over the last 3 months. But if we select this little area at the top, click on the pencil, I can actually change that and just focus everything I'm doing on the last 7 days up to the most amount of data is 16 months, which is quite a long time, or you can put in a custom date range, but I think it only goes up to 16 months anyway. I like 3 months, but if you're doing a bit of specific optimization, you might want to look at a more narrow range, like last 28 days, last 7 days, to see what changes happen. But we'll keep it on 3 months for the moment. And so what we can see below are 2 line graphs. One is showing the amount of clicks. So that's people seeing your search result and clicking on it. And the one in purple is showing the amount of impressions. So that is showing, giving you an idea of the amount of times that you're coming up in search. Let me just give you a quick example of this. So let's just go to a Google search here. Let's say it's for Marketing Club. Now we can see our result here, ratherinventive.com/ and then the subfolder Marketing Club. That would be an impression. So when that comes up, once someone types in Marketing Club, presses enter, and our result comes up, regardless of where they're looking. If you're on page 1 and they look at page 1, that's going to be impression. If they then move to page 2 and you're actually on page 2, that'll be the impression instead. So it's not every time they search, it's every time they search and get to your particular page that will show the impression. So that gives you the amount of times that people are actually looking for something like you're offering or looking for your keyword. And then if I were to actually click on that and go through to the club page, that would be a counted as a click. Now, what you want to be looking at here is not having too much of a disparity between the two. If you see your impressions go up, you really want to see your clicks go up as well, because otherwise you might think, why are we getting shown more, but people aren't clicking on us? To me, that would look as if there's something wrong. And we can actually see that near the end, quite recently, actually, from the beginning of May, over the course of May, we've been having a lot more impressions, which is great. That's really good. So something we're doing is getting us found more. However, we're not getting the click-throughs that I would expect to rise at the same time. I wouldn't necessarily expect them to rise at the same rate, but you would expect them to go in line together. So for me, there's a disparity between the two, and I'd want to look into that. What we can also do, if we wanted to, is click on this average position, tick that box, and that's going to show us sort of moving average of our search engine ranking positions. So it's an average of all of the positions that we show up in search put together. Now, overall, because we rank for loads of different keywords here, that's not particularly useful. So that will come in a bit more handy a bit later on. Okay, what else have we covered there? So looking at the performance, we've got our queries. So these are all the search queries that people use to come through to our website. A lot aren't to do with us. You can see here there's Tickletots Dragon's Den. This is to do with an interview that I published on our blog via the podcast. So it's quite interesting that people are searching for Tickletots Dragon's Den and we're coming up in search results. And that's great for the interview. Maybe that gets more listens to the interview. Maybe we meet a few more people might get to know our site in that way. But they certainly aren't looking for Dragon's Den at the time. What's interesting, though, they certainly aren't looking for us at the time. What's interesting, though, is they are looking for background information, maybe about Tickletots and about Dragon's Den and how they appeared on Dragon's Den. So while they're not looking for a service like ours, like internet marketing, video, web development, they might be interested in Tickletots and finding out more about Tickletots. Tickletots is it's like a reusable nappy. A woman in Herefordshire who developed this reusable nappy and then appeared on Dragon's Den. It's a very interesting interview if you happen to listen to it. You can obviously search for Tickletots Dragon's Den. But they may come across our site, they might look at the interview, and then they might go, actually, that's quite interesting. Can I subscribe to this podcast, find out a bit more? And maybe they're business-minded people and they'll benefit from some of our services down the line. So there's certainly a benefit in doing that. I think that's all we want to show on this page, really. I mean, there's a lot we probably want to dive into. So I'm going to look at some specific things in a bit more detail. Let's have a look at maybe identifying some traffic issues. So like we've had a look at there, we know there's something going on. We're getting more impressions, but maybe not as many clicks. I want to find out why that is. And let's have a look at specific blogs, because I'm interested in our blogs. We publish them quite regularly. They do seem to get a lot of traffic, and so that's where maybe the problem lies. So what I might do is go and have a look at. In fact, let's have a look at the number of pages here. So we can click on that tab. We can actually start to see that the Tickletots does get a lot of impressions and quite a few clicks, which is great. And it's actually outranking our homepage, which is interesting in terms of the number of clicks coming through, which is quite interesting. It does show, however, that Tickletots, looking at the impressions and the clicks, that the ratio there is higher than our homepage. So actually, in terms of delivering the right result for people, that's better than our homepage. So maybe there's some work to do there. But let's focus on blogs, just so we're looking at that. So I go up to new, and I look at page, and we want to search all pages looking at blogs. So we're just looking at news pages really. Why isn't that working? Oh, now for some reason this didn't work. Page. I'm putting in, there we go. Right, let's do it again. Page, blog. Brilliant. Lunchtime. Don't know what happened there. So now we're just looking at data where we are just focusing on pages where we're looking at blog posts. So this is quite interesting. Now, I'm not too worried about the interview here, so we'll leave that as it is. However, we are trying to optimize this page proofreading. And so I can see it's actually getting lots of impressions, which is brilliant, but not many clicks. Certainly not as many as Tickle Tots. So we're getting not quite double the number of impressions, but certainly nowhere near the clicks. So what we can do is actually click on this and just start focusing our attention on this. And I'm starting to see actually that rise that we saw in May, nearing the end of May, might be to do with this particular article and the work we're doing on it, getting more impressions. So it's being found more, but it's not getting the click-throughs I want. Although we can see these little blue spikes here. We were getting a couple of clicks since, we only added this near the beginning of the year. So we've got a little bit of traffic, get a couple of clicks through. We did some more changes, modifications, a couple more click-throughs happening now, which is great. So let's have a look and see what position this is. This page is on average 42. So that's about page 4, position 2, but it varies. And actually colleague Chris, who was on the last webinar, mentioned that if it's got the point afterwards, so this is 42.6, if it's got a point afterwards, it's still averaging out. So it's still moving around quite a lot. Maybe up or down. Once it starts settling on whole numbers, that's when it's got a bit, its ranking is a bit more steady. But we can see that over time the ranking has improved. So looking there at 42, and it started to improve a little bit over time, which is great. It's good news. We're starting to see the rank improve or reduce in this particular case. And that's probably why we're getting more impressions, because it's coming from the lower pages sort of moving up a little bit, the rankings. So we're going to get more impressions that way. So what we might want to do is, now we've focused on that page, and you can see it's changed the query at the top to focus on that specific page. We can go back to queries and see what keywords people are using to find this specific page and what position they're on. So what our average position is for those keywords over the last 3 months. And in fact, what we might do, because things have started to move over the recent period here, let's just look at the last 28 days. Because that's going to give us more accurate data about what's going on. Now we're optimizing for proofreading services. That's really what I want to be found, because we want to get more people coming through to our Inventive marketing page. So we're using this as almost a lead generator, a way to hook people in, give them some interesting information, and then hopefully, if it's right for them, they'll click through to our Inventive people and use some of the proofreading services we've got. Excuse me. And so we can see all the different keywords we're coming up for. Proofreading, that's quite a broad term, not so interested in that, although that's interesting to look at our rank on that. But proofreading services, we need to do a bit more work on that. And it's quite a commercial term, so a lot of people are targeting that and aiming to go after it. What we need to do, though, is we're getting a lot of impressions, but we're just not getting the clicks. I don't like that. So what do we do if we want to investigate that and optimize it? Because Google Search Console has given us this extra bit of information. Is, well, I'd probably start with looking for that search term and optimizing what your snippet looks like. So if we were to have a look at our page, and I'm going to go and edit the page, and we'll scroll down and have a look at Yoast, which is what we use for optimizing the title and description. Scoot down the bottom. So here we go. So really want to make sure that this snippet matches the page that people see. So I'll bring them both up so we can have a look at them together. So we've got a snippet that says proofreading services and guide rather than Inventive marketing. And whether you're writing a company blog or an email, proofreading text is critical. Use our guide for the following proofreading tips and services. Okay, that's good. So I feel that that's not a bad title in terms of what we're offering. Is the page content actually offering the same thing? So now we have a look at the title here. It says, why proofreading is important, your guide to spotless written communication. I'd actually say that that first part is good, but then it doesn't really talk about proofreading services. So if we think about people seeing our impression, and even if they do click through, so the few who do click through, what we're probably seeing is a bounce back on that page as well. because they're looking at it, not really reading it properly, not taking it fully in, and actually we're not mentioning proofreading services at the top. So that's probably something we can do to optimize that, and then see if we get a few more people clicking through. That reduces our bounce rate, and then we see the clicks go up a little bit more. But it's that I'm not going to go into search optimization now, but it's that sort of thing you can use Google Search Console for in terms of just developing that a little bit further. So let's close those off, and I'll leave that page. Right. So that's a really good way of looking at different anomalies, traffic issues, things you want to improve, and finding out a focused way of doing it. Now, the other way of doing it is to, let's say we are tracking some keywords and we want to find out what search position we are for them. So let's just go back to, in fact, close that. We'll come back to here, back to here. So we're looking at all of the keywords over the entire site for the last 28 days. I've just refined it down a little bit. Because if we're looking at search engine ranking position, we probably don't want an average over the last 3 months and to measure that every single month. We probably want to look at it on a month-by-month basis and just get loosely what the last 28 days of our average position is. Okay, so at the moment, I'm also optimizing Marketing Club. That's something we would like to get more people at least experiencing the club, coming through and checking out how fun this is. So what I would do is go up to a new, put in query, type in Marketing Club. Now, if I was looking at exploring different keywords that might come up for Marketing Club, then I could just apply that now. And I'm going to see all the different keywords that people use and come through to our website. So we've got Marketing Club, Digital Marketing Club, and so on. However, I just want to focus on the term Marketing Club. So I want exact query. And in fact, let's spread that out a little bit so we can see the development of this. So I'm looking at this page over the last 3 months. Now, we've had a Join the Club page for quite some time. In fact, since earlier this year, basically, when the new website went live. But we haven't really optimized for Marketing Club at all. And I think in the early days, some of it wasn't indexed at all. And I'll talk about that later. So we can see here what date, sort of early April, the page was starting to get indexed and getting impressions coming on there. We can start to see that we're getting more impressions for this particular page. But it's only quite newly optimized. So we're not getting a huge amount of impressions. And we're certainly not getting any clicks yet, which is what I really want. However, things are going in the right direction. We're getting more impressions and the frequency is getting higher. They're getting closer together. We can also see that the average position is going up. It still hasn't settled yet. So we're on a 0.4, 39.4, but it's moving up, which is great. And actually in this, a line for average position that's moving up is good. So we can see for Marketing Club, we're on average position 39.4. I actually did a search earlier, I think, here, and we're coming up on page 2, which is brilliant. So I've definitely seen movement from unplaced through, I think we're page 3 and 4 when I last looked, and now we're seeing page 2, which is great. So this is a really good way of tracking that position. Then what you can do is just log this number every single month, and you can make sure you're seeing movement on this. Which is really useful. The other way you can look at it is obviously you've got a graph here showing you the movement of the average position, or you can look at the dates and see how it's flowing up and down. So yeah, this is really interesting, but we're starting to get impressions, which is brilliant. Really pleased with that, but we're not getting the clicks. So what I might want to do is well, it's only been newly optimized, so we've got to wait some time. Often with search optimization, you can't expect instant results. You do have to make some changes and give it 30 days, 90 days realistically sometimes before things start to happen and things start to move forward. So you don't want to make too many changes because you might have some adverse effects in terms of you make some good changes and some bad changes and then nothing actually really happens. So make a few changes, see what the results are. I mean, key changes from search optimization are just to make sure the keywords are in the title and in the actual description. You know, start with that, get some basics in place first, and then then you can see what changes are happening. So just like with optimizing for proofreading, make sure you have a look at the snippet. Go and actually search for it. Certainly if you're only a couple of pages back, go and search for results. See what it looks like. Make sure there's nothing cut off. Make sure it actually says what you're offering on that page. And then go and have a look at the page. Because what you've got to look at is, once you start getting click-throughs, is making sure that people stay on the page, that you're offering them the same thing that you promised on the snippet. So anyway, that's, again, I'm not going to go into search optimization. We've got a couple of previous webinars focusing on that really. But what Search Console is really useful at doing is giving you some numbers so that you can measure that on a regular basis and see where the problem might be. You know, am I getting loads of engagement or loads of views, but no engagement, or lots, or the positions going down, and I need to do something about it. So that's a really good place to start, I think, performance if you're doing search optimization. Have I covered everything here? Yeah, I believe I have. Okay, so let's move on to URL inspection. So what this allows you to do is look at a particular URL. So you might want to do this if you want to make sure it's indexed. So you just want to check that that URL is indexed. So let's do that with our Marketing Club one. I've already searched for that earlier today. Let's click on that. And what it will do is it will go and find that URL, your page, and go and check Google's index for it. If it's already indexed, you're going to get something like this. So it says it's on Google. Its coverage means it's already indexed and it's ready to be found in Google. You've got no problems on there. Sometimes Google knows about the page, but for some reason, you have told Google not to index it, or there's a problem with the page that's stopping it being indexed and viewable on the site, in which case it's going to show you here. And then there are other issues, like if you've got elements on the page that are too small or something to do with mobile usability, these are going to show up here as well. We've also got some reviews on the page, so it actually gives you, it shows you some snippets of those reviews, so you can check all of that works as well, which is great. And I know I've got 5 on there, or is it 4? I can't remember, but I know I've got some reviews on there, and it just gives you a good idea of everything that should be on that page. So this is a really good way of, if you're optimizing a page, before you do any work, make sure it's in the index first. And also, if it's not, by putting it in here and inspecting that particular URL, it will tell you it's not in the index. And then you can ask it to request indexing on the right-hand side. So if it's not in the index already, you can request that Google go and index it. Also, if you've made some major changes, so you've really done some good work with an SEO or your web developer, and you've improved the page and you want Google to check it as soon as possible and not wait for it to come around at its own leisure and crawl the website, then you can click on this request indexing link, and it's going to do that for you a bit more quickly. I don't know exactly how quickly, but it's usually pretty quick. Sometimes it can be within the day. So this is really good to check that your key pages are indexed on Google, but also to request re-indexing when you need it. Okay, so moving on. So that's really good. So moving on, let's go and have a look at coverage. So what this page is showing us is essentially why I'm looking at the page is what errors are on this page. Are there any problems with the site that we need to deal with right now? And I think, you know, if you see errors in here, then you want to fix these as quickly as possible. We've got no errors, and we've had no errors for a while, which is fab. The sorts of errors you might see in here are if there is a 500 error, which means there's a server error on one page, for example. Maybe your site's working, but there's a page that you don't really look at very often that's got an error on it. It's going to show up on here. Or any sort of error which is stopping Google viewing that particular page, and also it's going to be a problem for your visitors. You want to focus on these. That's why it's highlighted first. Let's untick this and we'll go to valid with warnings. So this I would look at next. This is going to be other pages that are okay, but something is wrong with them. And in this case, it's showing pages that are indexed. So Google has seen them, copied them into its database. But then we are using robots.txt, and we've probably spoken to you about this from a search optimization point of view, but robots.txt is a little file that you can go on your website and tell Google which pages can and can't be indexed. And you might want to use this because you might have login links or PDFs or certain files that you don't really want cluttering up the index, but need to be on the website. You put them in there. What this is saying is that robots.txt file or some file on your website is saying, don't index this page, but the page is in the index because it's been linked somewhere online. So this to me is a flag, and we need to look at this. So it's going to list all the different types here, and I can click on this type, this row, and I can see more details. I'm actually going to now see all of the different links that have been shared online somewhere. I mean, Google has found these links somewhere. Someone has shared them online, and so they're available. Could be on your own site, could be on somewhere else. And we need to find out why they're there. If they should be indexed, why aren't they being indexed? Why are they being blocked? If they shouldn't be in the index, why are they being shared online? So these I know shouldn't be in the index, so I'm not overly worried about this particular error, but I don't want them in the index. Again, they're clutter. I want our index to be clean. So I need to find out where these are being linked. So I can use something like this phrase. So if I just open up a new browser tab, and we'll do a Google search for this. So I'm going to use site:/ratherinventive.com. And so what that's going to instruct Google to do is to search just our Rather Inventive site for the term email.ratherinventive.com. And I put it in quotes because I want Google to only search for that bit of text as it sees it. Press enter. And one result comes up, although there are some omitted ones. So it just brings up some others here. And we can see that this Google result comes up, and I won't click on it, but actually links to a client newsletter or not a newsletter. It links to a link that a client used in their newsletter, but they've also used that link on their website as well. So it's been indexed and then put on their site. That goes into the Google index, and then our email system is saying, actually don't index those pages. Because they're not web pages. And so we get this issue between the two. Google has it in an index, but actually we're saying don't put it in the index. So now I need to figure out how to get this either offline, or I need to tell Google to ignore anything on email.ratherinventive.com. Now, actually, I don't have a solution for this right now, oddly. So I've got to figure out the best way to get rid of this link and some of the others I can see here. So I'm not sure of the best way to solve that, but I'm looking into it, and I'm going to fix that. But from my point of view, it's not an issue here. I don't think this is going to affect our search engine position on any other pages and search phrases because they're not related to the website. But I don't like them being here, so I want to clean them up. So if I have any follow-up to this, I will let you know. But this is a good example that if you had links here that shouldn't be indexed, or should be indexed, then you can find them and try and sort them out. Try and find out why they're in the index to begin with, and get rid of them if they shouldn't be there, or make sure that they're indexed by fixing a problem on your website, which is telling them not to be indexed. Unfortunately, it really depends on what the issue is as to what your next step would be on this. But at least this gives you an idea, and you can copy and paste. Or take a screen grab, send it to your web developer or SEO and say, help, sort this out for me. Often as well, Google will send through an email telling you you've got issues like this. So that can be quite useful to forward on. Okay, so what else we got here? Oh yeah, something else that's useful is once you have sorted out this problem, you can click on Validate Fix. And what that'll do is cause Google to go and check those pages again, and then it will check the pages again, and then you can say they're fixed. So it kind of forces it to check them a bit more quickly, because otherwise I would assume pages like this, it's not going to check as often as valid pages appearing on the site. Okay, so let's just go back to the main coverage here. We can also tick valid, and we can make sure that we've got all pages we expect to be indexed on here. It's actually a check that Chris does for our full search engine optimization report. Well, he'll have a look at the pages on your website, the amount of pages available, and loosely check that Google has most of those indexed, because if you don't, we've got a disparity there and we need to sort out why. So this is a good little check as well. And then we've got this excluded one here. This isn't so important, but again, I like to keep things neat, and there's some bits in here that irritate me. So let's have a look at these. Everything shown in here, this 1.85 thousand links or pages shown in here, they have all been excluded from the Google index for various different reasons. Now, there's a couple of things in here which are to do with down to us and our control. Some of the things are affected by Yoast. So the things down to our control were when we moved over the site, some of the pages that were on the old website weren't fully redirected over to new pages. So some of those have been indexed in here and said, well, there's, they're not found. There's a problem with this particular page. The reason it's not an issue is because it's not in our sitemap. So therefore, we're not considering a live page. But Google's going, well, yeah, I've got this page in my index, but it's not found on your website. So one of the things I've done more recently is to make sure all of those pages that are not found are to try and redirect them over to the correct resource on our website. And we actually removed a lot of pages. So that means repointing them or redirecting them over to maybe the blog page or the most related page on our website. But there are others like crawl anomaly. Let me have a look at that, see if that's going to come up with anything here. Yeah, so there's an interesting issue here. I don't know if you can see this particular one, where it relates to a blog where I was talking about a first workshop that I ran. I mean, that's a really old blog, and actually it's been removed from the site. However, at some point in the past, we're using a plugin called Yoast to help optimize our website for search, allowing us to change terms and so on, and which I gave you a demo of that earlier. Now, a problem in the past is they made a mistake in their plugin, and when it updated to a new version, it caused all images on the website to be linked to their own attachment page, which basically caused every image to have its own page created for it, which was just a page with its image on there. And actually, depending on the theme you had, some of those pages were just blank, some would just show the image, and basically it caused a lot of problems. And in some cases, we didn't notice that was happening until it was too late and those pages have been indexed. That's a bit of a pain. And so this is an outlier from that, where we've been trying to remove them over time, saying, Google, these don't exist anymore, get rid of them. So you might see things like this where you've had old pages that are still in Google's index, but you've removed them from your site, but you haven't told Google. And this is a good place to see all of those links and basically tidy them up, redirect them if there's new content, or you can tell Google that they've gone away, that this content is not coming back anymore. I know, speaking to Chris, that Google can keep this missing content, this 404 content, for up to a year, if not longer, before it really gets rid of it from its index, because it likes to keep hold of information. So if you're like me and you like to keep things tidy, I would work through every single one of these links and find out why they're in the index, and also then tell them not to be in the index. And then over time, when Google comes back to your website, it's going to start to look at these pages again, see the redirects, see the information you're telling it about whether it should or shouldn't be in the index, and remove it. So I've recently actually made some redirect changes, and I'd like to see a lot of these disappear in the next 30 days or so as Google comes back to the site. Okay, anything else we need to look at there? So we walked through all of those. Brilliant. So I'm next going to look at sitemaps. Now, sitemaps are really useful, actually, because what they do is it's your opportunity to tell Google exactly what pages from your site need to be indexed. And generally, that's going to be all of them. But it's also quite useful because you can specify what pages need to be indexed. And then if Google comes across a problem where you're telling it you want a page indexed, but for some reason there's a problem stopping it being indexed, it's going to highlight that a bit more effectively than if you didn't put a sitemap in at all. The other nice thing about a sitemap is, just like URL inspection, if you change or update the sitemap, that can cause Google to go back to your site and re-spider everything. Now, sitemaps used to be made by hand, so they're actually just a bit of text data with references to links on your website. Now, let's see if I can show you one of them. In fact, I'll go through this and show you this way. So they used to be made in text and a bit of a pain to make because they were very manual. However, the plugin Yoast will make these for you, and you can, to make sure it's turned on, and if you haven't added your sitemap, go to Yoast in your WordPress installation, then go to General, then go to Features tab at the top. And it's difficult to find this, but if you look down for XML sitemaps, there's a little question mark. Click on that, and then you've got a link here, see the XML sitemap. If we click on that, it's going to take us straight to it. And in this particular sitemap, it's a sitemap of sitemaps. So it's one sitemap pointing to our posts, our blog articles in this case, pages on the website, and blog categories. If I have a quick look at posts, this is going to list all of the pages which are relevant to the blog posts on the website, quite a few of them. So when I submit this one sitemap, I'm actually submitting 3 sitemaps to Google, and Google will know that. If, however, your sitemap that Yoast is generating contained more sitemaps than you wanted, you can actually just pick one of them to submit. If you aren't quite sure, I mean, another good way to check if your website has a sitemap is you can often just go to your domain, sitemap.xml. It will redirect you through to the right place. There's lots of different ways, and it really depends on how you've made the website to generate that sitemap. If you're on WordPress and you have Yoast, it should be making one for you. As you can see there, you can disable that in Yoast by turning that off. So you want to make sure that's on if you want to use them. If you're using something else like Squarespace, Shopify, and so on, you'll need to Google for those to find out how to do it. But it's reasonably straightforward. Once you do have that link, I can copy and paste, go back to Search Console, and I can add this in as a new sitemap. I'm not going to do that because I've already got this one in here. But yes, you'll be able to submit that, and then it will go through and tell you whether it can be found and go away and index it. So that's really useful. Removals here are quite useful if you have some items in your index and you need to get them removed straight away. Maybe you've removed the content from your website, but you need to get them removed straight away for whatever reason. You can copy and paste the link in here, and it's going to temporarily remove that from Google. I think it's for about 90 days, and then it's going to index it again. So it'll remove it reasonably immediately, and then it's going to go and hold that out of its index, and in 90 days, it's going to check again. If your link is still there with the same content, it's going to re-index that page. So if I particularly wanted to remove some of these links that I felt that shouldn't be in the index, I could go through and put in a request to remove all of those if I wanted to do that. I haven't yet. I'm going to make sure the other ways of removing them work first. If not, I might use that for some of them. Okay, enhancements. So here is where we are talking about the speed for the website, or we're looking at different things. So like mobile usability, whether you have reviews on your site, you're using structured data and that sort of thing. This is going to give you a heads up onto whether that's working. Sorry, I mentioned speed, but that's not working for me at the moment. That's new on some sites, and you won't see it on all of them. Again, it shows up the errors. So if you have errors, it's going to highlight those first. I don't have any errors, which is brilliant. However, I used to. And I think it came under this category of text too small to read. It's not going to show any there anymore, but we can see that I've fixed that problem. I found out what pages were an issue and fixed the issue. And you know what I think it was? I think on those particular pages, we had an old way of embedding a YouTube video. And it was actually on a mobile view. It's actually pushing the YouTube video outside of the mobile view. So I've just found those pages, used the new way of embedding it, because some of our blogs we've been going since 2009, so they're quite old. I used the new way, saved the page, and then asked it to revalidate that particular page or validate the fix. And so it went back, checked those pages, and it's come back as passed, which is brilliant. So that's really good. So I know that as far as Google's concerned, it feels it's a mobile valid site. If you do get any issues, they're going to come up here, and you want to pay attention to these because it's going to be important from a search engine optimization process. If you don't have this right, it may affect where your rank is, particularly compared to competitors, but just generally if Google If Google is reviewing your site from a mobile first perspective, this will make a difference if you are not mobile friendly. So definitely worth taking looking at this. Then depending on the structured data that you're using on your website, it will show you whether you've got various logos linked or review snippets. I mentioned those earlier. So if you're using reviews on your website to show what reviews you're getting, you can make sure they're coming up here if there's any problems. And actually, I did have some problems with some unparsable structured data. Just basically, there was a missing colon in there. Fix those and we're all good again. But this gives you a really good heads up to make sure everything's working. Now, if you don't know what structured data is or why it's important, you might have heard of schema, actually. That's another thing, another way it can be called. You probably want to listen to an interview I had with Dwayne Forrester. He worked at Microsoft or Bing, and he helped develop structured data or schema online with a lot of other folks in order so that machines can understand data a bit better. I'm not going to go into it too much, but basically structured data is a way of putting additional information on your site to give machines like search engines more information about what data you put on there. It gives it context, really. An example are the reviews on our site. Let's have a look at our Marketing Club page. If we scroll down to some of the reviews, here we go. So looking at these, we know these are reviews that we can see here because we've got a title above, more reviews and feedback. But if I'm a machine or Google's search algorithm and I'm looking at this page, I don't necessarily know that's a review. I might be able to guess it's a review, but I don't know it is. So in the code underneath, see if I can find it, then we've added some structured data, which is here, which is written. It looks like code to a lot of people, but you should be able to read the data there. It's done just in a certain format that machines can read. And basically, it's just representing exactly what can be seen on screen, but it's doing it in a way the machines can read. And it's saying specifically that these are reviews. This is a review body, this is the data review, and this is the person who wrote the review. And also, we get the opportunity to have an aggregate rating. So we can say, we've got 52 reviews, and we've got an aggregate rating of 5. So that's really useful. And that's what structured data is. It's a way of representing the information you can see on screen in a way that computers can read it. So I may not have said that in the most eloquent way, but it's definitely worth listening to his interview as to why you need to use that, what's available, and what's the benefit of using it on your site. But when you do, Google's going to tell you, A, if it's loading on there properly, and also if it's working correctly. Something that Chris will do as part of an SEO check is he'll also look at these manual actions. So he'll make sure to see if Google has put a specific penalty on your site, or if you've got any issues like a hack on your site has been detected. And these are key areas to check to make sure there's no problems at all. Sometimes people talk about the Google algorithm. This is all to do with Google's search engine being adjusted over time, the algorithm being adjusted. But sometimes Google put particular penalties on you. So if for example, you've got your traffic dropping quite quickly and you're wondering why and you haven't done anything to the site, it could be that you are doing something wrong and Google doesn't like it, in which case it might give you a manual action. So you do want to check here if you are suffering any problems. And then let's look down to what else we got here. Links and settings. So this is quite interesting on links to have a look and see which pages are getting how many external links. So we can see on here our main index page, main home page is getting 11,000 links from various different sources around the web. And we can see which of those domains are linking to us. And on the right hand side, we can also see which pages are which pages on the site are getting the most links. Now, a lot of them, like Contact Clients Club and so on, are on the main menu. So they're going to be linked from every other particular page. But some of them, like homepage, might be linked in multiple places. And it might be that one of the core aspects of search optimization is making sure that the pages you want to be optimized are getting those links from other pages, and this might give you a little indication whether they are or not. Also coming to the end here in settings, if you ever wanted to add your web developer in here, or maybe your web developer needs to add you in, or your SEO person, then this is where you'll do it in users and permissions. So this is where you can add people in. Now, what I would recommend is if you're adding anyone else in, unless they need permission to be able to make changes, is just to give them restricted access, which will allow them to view the data but not make any changes to it, and only give them full access if you trust them. I think that's everything I can show you on Google Search Console. I think the most important areas for me are looking at coverage in an initial stage, just to make sure there's nothing wrong with your site. And you really want to do this before you start optimizing anything, because if you start optimizing a site without making sure there are no problems with it, you might just be doing a lot of work and waste a lot of time when you could have fixed some of these problems and got better ranking just from that, and then you can work on top of that. So definitely look at your errors first, and then you can look at performance, start seeing which pages are performing best and why, and then start optimizing those. Something else I will show you as well is, a lot of you may like to use Google Analytics to view how people are using your website and what page they're looking at, when they're looking at it, and so on. What you can do is view some of this Google Search Console data inside Google Analytics. So I'm going to show you how to do that. So let's go over to Google Analytics and let's have a look at its acquisition, Search Console, landing pages. Now, I've disabled the link on this at the moment. So it was linked up to Search Console, but I disabled it to go through the process with you. So if you haven't linked the two up, this is what you'll see. And all you need to do is click on this button at the top, scroll down a little bit and look for Search Console, adjust Search Console. You want to click that button. It's not particularly clear. And then we've got Search Console site. There's none linked here, so we want to add. And there are loads, so I'm going to search for rather Inventive. That one. Oh, now I can't find it. For some reason, it's not coming up. Oh, yeah, I know why. Silly me. This only works with specific, if you are using a URL to link when you verify Search Console and you use a URL to link it and a domain property to link it, it will only work with the URL version. I forgot about that. So if you want to link the two up, then you will need to add a specific verification for one of your addresses. So you might want to verify, for example, this address. So I'll just quickly show you how you do that. If we go in, add property, verify this, it should be automatically verified because we verified the main domain. And then with any luck, if I refresh this page, we should see it in here. That looks good. Okay, so now we can see the property down here. We select the property and then save. Now, if we go back to analytics, it should have done this for us. There we go, and we can see it's connected. Save that. Brilliant. And now if I go back to acquisition, Search Console landing pages, we should be able to see some of the same data that we can see in the actual Google Search Console app in here. It hasn't imported it all yet. It's going to take some time to bring that through. However, it's useful. You know, for some people, if you have automated reports that you run through from Google Analytics, like using these reports at the top, you may prefer to have it in here. To be honest, as you saw, I don't really use it. I use Search Console mainly for this sort of information, so I keep it in here. Anyway, I think that's enough of the walkthrough. Hopefully, if I went through too fast, you can always rewind and go back when you're looking at the replay. But hopefully you found that useful. And just want to finish off by going through a few things on the slides. Cool. It was good to do that, actually, because I think Google Search Console is one of these tools that provides some really useful information that a lot of people aren't savvy to. And it may be that their web developer set it up for them, but then isn't under contract to look. Well, I think this is a good opportunity for you to be looking at Google Search Console on a regular basis. And if you do identify problems, then nudging your web developer to fix them, or fixing them if you can, because it will impact you. And it may be things that you don't notice until it becomes too late. And then it's never too late, but it becomes harder for you to fix them at a later stage. Anyway, so just as we finish, maybe there's something there that you picked up that you thought was interesting. What are you going to do? What are you going to make sure? You're on Google Search Console. That's a really good action to start with. Maybe that you are going to have a look and see if there's any errors in your site, and you're going to see if you can fix them. Whatever you're going to do, pick one of those and commit to it in the next 30 days. And do let me know if you need any help with that. I don't think we've got time for Q&A at the moment, so I'll leave that for now. But if you've got any questions, just fire them over to support@ratherinventive.com. The next topic, I've decided to focus on how to design and build a website. I've actually worked on this a little bit, this particular topic, a little bit outside of this workshop for other presentations, but I thought actually we can focus on it here because there's a little bit more I can do to be more specific to you guys and give it a little bit more detail. So we'll be looking at how you might go about planning a website. So a little bit about looking at customers and that sort of detail, competitors, search optimization, all the bits I touch on really when we're working on developing a website with someone, and then some of the different platforms. So we mainly focus on WordPress, but I can talk to you about Weebly, Wix, all of those, Squarespace, all the different platforms, and the pros and cons of each of those. Because WordPress is just not always an option for some people. It's a little bit of a steeper learning curve, and actually some of the others are quick to get going with. So we'll talk through those as well. Do tell your friends if you found this interesting or any of the other clubs interesting. Tell your friends, let them know how it all works, and let them know if they sign up. There's no commitment. They can cancel at any time. And when they do, they get 60-minute one-to-one with me. And that may be something, if they're really struggling with marketing or any aspect of marketing, really, then they might find it helpful. So do share it with people. Tell them to go to ratherinventive.com/club, or just email me, copy them in, and it'd be nice to hear from you. Thank you. Right, thanks so much. The next club session is on the 23rd of June, 1 p.m. this time, a little bit late on this one. Do stay in touch, connect with me on LinkedIn, and enjoy the rest of the week, month, year, whatever. Good to talk to you. Bye.